Welcome around my channel. It was a Sunday afternoon, warm, bright, and so quiet you could hear the buzz of bees weaving lazily through the lavender lining the back fence. I was in the garden again, my little sanctuary, knees deep in soil and solitude. Gardening had become my therapy ever since my divorce 2 years ago. No voices, no judgments, just me, the earth, and the comfort of rhythm. I found peace there. That day I was wearing one of my old sundresses, faded yellow cotton, thin strapped and probably too low in front for bending over flower beds. But it was hot, and frankly, I didn't expect company. I had my hair twisted up loosely, my feet bare, in the grass, and a towel in my hand, coaxing a stubborn root from the ground. When I heard the gate creak, I turned around and blinked at the figure walking in. It took me a second to recognize him. Ryan, my friend Denise's son. He wasn't the lanky teenager I remembered from a few years back. He'd grown, broad shoulders, deeper voice, that easy, confident stride. He was 22 now, maybe 2-3 still young enough to make me feel meowed, but old enough that I noticed how my eyes lingered too long. He grinned at me. "Hey, Laura, Mom told him to come help you with that garden wall." I squinted up at him, shielding me eyes with my dirt-covered hand. "Shut it." "Yeah," he said, nodding toward the side of the house. "Said you were planning to pull those old bricks out and stack something new. Figured you might need a hand." I hesitated. I hadn't really asked Denise for help, but then again I had mentioned it to her last week at brunch, maybe in passing. I hadn't expected her to send her son over like a favor. Still, I was alone, and I did need help. And Ryan, well, he wasn't hard to look at. "All right," I said, brushing my hands on my dress. "But don't say I didn't warn you. That wall's been there since before you were born. It's stubborn." "So am I," Hess said with a crooked smile, and just like that, you slipped off his hoodie and set to work. We spent the next hour under sun, working side by side. I dug while he pulled. He pried while it was stacked. It was also natural, every so often. I'd catch him glancing at me, not in a disrespectful way, but curious, observing like he was trying to figure him out. "You always do this alone?" He asked after a while, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his arm. "Makes me feel useful," I said, leaning on my spade. "Besides, I like the quiet. No one to interrupt your thoughts." Hal looked at me thoughtfully. "I get that, but it seems lonely. There was a pause. The kind that floats between two people when something unspoken hangs there, waiting to be acknowledged." I didn't say anything, just bent down to gather a few bricks, but I was aware of him now in a way I hadn't expected. The closeness, the way he moved so confidently, but not arrogantly. He was kind, attentive, and despite the edge of difference, I didn't feel dismissed or irrelevant. I felt seen when the wall was halfway dismantled. We took a break. I poured us lemonade and sat on the edge of the deck, our legs dangling down into the grass. His knee brushed against mine lightly, not on purpose, not at first, but then it stayed. There, warm and steady. "Your garden's beautiful," he said, his eyes scanning the beds I poured my heart tinto. "Like a hidden place no one knows about." "Sometimes that's exactly what you want it to be," I said quietly. He looked at me, really looked at me. "Why is that?" I hesitated again, caught between deflection and truth. "Because when you've been through things, heartbreak, disappointment, you stop wanting to be seen. You build walls. You grow roses and wrap your hurt in vines. He nodded slowly, thoughtful. "You don't have to hide here." Something in his voice pulled my eyes back to his. He wasn't playing a game. He wasn't teasing. He was earnest, and that caught me off guard more than anything else. "Ryan," I said, half laughing, "you're young." "You're what?" 22.23 last month, he said. "And I'm 47, I continued, setting my glass down. "Old now. To be your mother." He smirked slightly, but it was gentle. "You're not my mother." And age doesn't mean you stop deserving to Boinderstead. That sentence landed like a weight in my chest. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. So much of my life had been about responsibilities, my son, my job, the expectations of being a good wife, and then a good ex-wife. I had buried my needs under practicality, and now here was this young man speaking to a version of me I hadn't let out. In years, I didn't expect this, I said, my voice softer now. He reached out, not boldly, just enough to touch my hand. Neither did I. The moment hung there. Gentle, surprising, electric. I didn't move. Neither did he. We just sat there, the garden buzzing around us. The sky stretched wide overhead as something subtle but powerful passed between us. It wasn't about lust. Not yet. It was something deeper. Recognition, curiosity, permission. I stood up first, mostly because my heart was beating in waves I didn't want to admit. We should finish this wall, I said. He stood too, brushing off his jeans. Sure, but I'd like to come back tomorrow if you don't mind. I looked at him, feeling a strange swirl in my stomach. I wouldn't mind. As he left through the garden gate, I caught myself watching the way he looked, relaxed, unhurried, but as if something had shifted in him too. I turned back to my flower beds, but I didn't touch a thing. I just stood there staring at the wall, my fingers still tingling from where I had etched. Me. Something had begun quietly and unexpectedly in the middle of my garden, and I knew deep down that nothing would quite be the same again. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, but my body had that subtle ache from yesterday's work, the kind that felt turned. But there was another kind of energy humming beneath the surface. What I hadn't felt in years. Anticipation. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing out my hair, realizing how long it had grown. A few strands of gray peeked through at the temples, soft buffinest. I considered covering them, then didn't. I wasn't trying to be anything I wasn't. If Ryan was coming back, he was going to see the real me. Not just the version who tended roses and wore old sundresses, but the woman who had lived, hurt, rebuilt herself, and somehow still had room for surprise. By 10. The sun was already climbing, and he was back in the garden. I had dressed it in another soft cotton dress, this wannabe with little white flowers. It fit snug around my waist, dipping just enough at the neckline that I caught myself adjusting it. Not for modesty, just nerves. I wasn't sure if he'd really show up, but then I heard the familiar creak of gate again. He walked in, wearing a white t-shirt and dark jeans, a small toolbox in one hand, a brown paper beige in the other. Morning, he said with that same easy smile. Brought lunch. Figured we'd work straight through. Look at you prepared, I said, smiling despite myself. Learned from my mom, he replied, setting the bag down. And maybe I just like feeding people I want to spend time with. The words slipped out casually, but they lingered in the air between us. He didn't press. He just walked over to where we'd left off, and I followed, picking up where we had paused. The work went on, hands brushing now and then, exchanging glances. That said more than we dared to speak. The tension was still quiet, respectful, but undeniably there. Around noon, we took another break, this time under the maple tree near the back corner of the yard. The paper bag revealed sandwiches, fruit, 2 sodas, and a chocolate bar. You remembered a light dark chocolate. I asked as surprised. You mentioned it once, he said, handing it to me, and I listened. That response had caught me off guard again. Not because it was charming, though it was, but because it was true. He had paid attention, and in a world where I had grown used to being overlooked, that meant more than I could admit. We sat on the grass, eating quietly for a while. Then he asked something that made me set my sandwich down. Can I ask you something kind of personal? I nodded slowly. Sure. Why you and your ex split? I looked at him, caught between the instinct to keep things surface level and the temptation to open a door I'd kept shut. But his tone wasn't invasive, Dot. It was genuine. We stopped seeing each other, I said finally. Not physically, I mean emotionally. Over the years, we got used to the routine, the roles. And one day, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I felt really wanted. Not just needed, wanted. Ryan nodded. That sounds familiar, even if I haven't been married. I gave him a curious look. You've been through something like that already. I had a girlfriend for a couple of years, he said. It ended last winter, Dot. She was great, but I always felt like I had to prove I was worth her time. Like I was buying measured. That's exhausting, I said. He smiled softly, Dot. It is, but sitting here with you doesn't feel like that. My breath caught a little, Ryan. He leaned back on his elbows, watching the clouds for a moment before continuing. I'm not trying to push you. Lara, I know this is complicated, but I just want you to know that being around you feels different. Good, different. I was quiet for a long time. I didn't know how to process that kind-off honesty. Not from someone his age, not from anyone in recent years, really. And yet, part of me had known from the moment he walked through that gate yesterday that something was shifting in me. We finished lunch, both of us a little quieter now, and went back to work. The wall was almost completely dismantled by late afternoon, and Webb began sketching out how the new one might look. He crouched beside me, scribbling lines on a notepad, and I couldn't help but glance at the way his arm brushed mine. This time, I didn't move away. I could come again this weekend, he offered casually. If you want help, I'd click that, I said, and I meant it. The sky began to turn soft with early evening light, and as we gathered tools and packed up, Hepow's near the back steps. Hey, he said, eyes locking with mine. You don't have to answer now, but would you want to have dinner sometime? Just us. No gardening gloves. My heart fluttered, both thrilled and terrified. That might raise a few eyebrows, I said, half laughing. Let them raise. He replied, I'm not interested in anyone else's story about us. Just ours. There it was again. That calm, clear way he saw things. Saw me. I stepped closer, my fingers lightly brushing his forearm. Let me think about it. I'll wait, I said. He didn't lean in. He didn't try to make a move. He just smiled, respectful and steady, and walked back through the gate. When I finally went inside, I didn't turn on the TV or check my phone. I stood in the kitchen, staring out at the fading light over the garden, my heart full of emotions I hadn't let myself feel in years. I was surprised, intrigued, nervous, and alive. That night, lying in bed, I kept replaying his words. I'm not interested in anyone else's story about us, just ours. And for the first time in a very long while, I started wondering if maybe, just maybe, I still had a new story waiting to be written. The days that followed had a strange kind of electricity to them. Quiet bit of mystical, like the feeling before a summer storm. Everything felt charged. I kept myself busy during the week, pruning roses, reorganizing kitchen drawers that didn't heed. Reorganizing, even repainting Thiggy's bathroom just to fill the space off time. But no matter what I did, I kept thinking about Ryan. It wasn't just his presence or his eyes or that easy way he moved through the garden. It was the way he listened. The way he looked at me like I mattered. The way he wasn't afraid of silence or if saying something honest when silence wasn't enough. By Saturday morning, I had convinced myself that our conversation might have been more in my head than in his intentions. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe he was just being kind and thoughtful, a rarity these days. And maybe I was just lonely. I was halfway through watering the flower beds when I heard the gate swing open again. This time I didn't even look up. I just smiled to myself and said, You're late. I brought coffee, he said behind me. Forgive me. I turned around and there he was, t-shirt snug against his chest, sunglasses pushed up in his chair, holding 2 paper cups. He looked like he belonged there, like he'd always belonged there. I took the coffee from his hand. You always bring bribes, he grinned. Only for women who intimidate me. That made me laugh. You don't seem easily intimidated. You'd be surprised. We worked, most off the morning without too many words, which somehow made it easier. There was music coming softly from the Bluetooth speaker I'd set on the deck, something bluesy and slow. The wallways taking shape again, not the same as before, but better, stronger. Around noon, we paused for water. Hess stood next to me by the spigot, wiping sweat from his forehead, then turned home, his voice quieter this time. Have you thought about dinner? I looked at him, surprised by how calm sounded. Not pushing, just asking. I swallowed, not because I was unsure, but because I'd already decided. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. I said, and I nodded slowly. Yes, but not out somewhere. His eyes narrowed slightly in question. I want to cook, I continued. Here in my space, just us. Something soft in his expression. That sounds perfect. That evening, I lit candles, not because I was trying to make it romantic, though maybe I was, but because they made the eating room feel warm. I cooked something simple, but elegant. Lemon garlic chicken, roasted potatoes, asparagus, and a bottle of wine I'd been saving for an occasion that ever seemed to come until now. When Ryan arrived, he looked different, not just because of dress shirt and slacks, but because carried himself differently, less casual, more intentional. His eyes found mine the moment I opened the door. You look amazing, he said. I almost didn't recognize you without dirt on your hands. Don't get used to it, I said with a smirk. But thank you. Dinner passed easily. Laughter, soft clinks off glasses. The kind of conversation that dances from deep to light and back again without ever feeling forced. He told me about college, about his frustrations with not knowing what came next. I told him about the quiet after my divorce, about how my garden saved me in ways therapy never could. By the time we moved to the living room, the bottle of wine was half gone, and the air had changed. Not heavy, but undeniably more aware. He sat close beside me, his thigh brushing mine. There was a long pause, and then he asked, "Are you scared?" I turned to him. Of what? Of this, of me? I took a breath. Not of you, of what it might mean. Of what others might say, of letting myself feel this. His hand brushed against mine, fingers curling slightly until they found a gentle hold. You don't owe anyone an explanation. I know, I whispered. But I owe myself honesty. Then be honest, he said. I looked at him, really looked at him. His face so open, so much younger. And he'd somehow more emotionally grounded than men twice his age. I had spent so long denying my own needs, my own wants, that it felt foreign to speak them out loud. I like you, Ryan, more than I went to admit. His fingers tightened slightly around mine. Then don't fight it. Silence fell again, but this time I wasn't uncertain. It was full of possibility. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to stop him. I didn't. Our lips met gently, and for a moment, it wasn't about anything but how soft, how right it felt. There was no urgency, no desperation, just quiet longing finally given spacito bloom. When we parted, I didn't open my eyes right away. I just stayed there, forehead resting against his. I'm not looking for something casual, I say quietly. Neither am I, he answered. We sat there for a long time, talking, kissing, talking again. Nothing rushed, no lines crossed that shouldn't be. Just a woman and a man from two different parts of life, finding something unexpected in each other's company. When he left that night, he kissed me again at the door. Good night, Laura. Good night, Ryan. And when I closed the door behind him, I leaned against it and smiled for the first time in a long while without guilt. Whatever this was, it was real, and it was only just beginning. The following week was filled with a strange kind of quiet joy, a peaceful hum that settled into my chest and stayed there even on days when I didn't see Ryan. I felt it in the mornings when I tied my hair up. In the afternoon shin, I watered the garden. In the evenings when I check my phone and find a simple message from him, thinking about you or wish I was there or some items, just hi. It didn't mean to be poetic. The simplicity of it was what made it feel so true. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not Denise, not my son, not even my closest friend, Beth. Some things needed time to breathe before being put into words. It wasn't secrecy I felt. It was protection. What we had was fragile still, like a new bloom, beautiful, but not meant for the wind just yet. Ryan came by again that Friday afternoon, no tools this time, no garden gloves, just him. And me, I thought. We could go for a walk, he said, offering his hand with a small grin. I smiled back. I haven't taken a walk just to walk in ages. That's exactly why you should, he said. We didn't go far, just down the quiet neighborhood street, past blooming crepe myrtles and picket fences, our arms brushing now and then. At one point, he took my hand, fully, and we walked like that. No hesitation, no shame, just connection. I've never met anyone like you, I said suddenly. You make me think about things I didn't know I needed. You slow everything down? I looked at him, the warmth of his hand in mine, and your remind me that I'm still allowed Tafo, that it's not too late. The words came out before I could filter them, but he didn't take them back. I didn't want to. Ryan had shown me something I'd forgotten how to believe in. The possibility of joy, of emotional energy, of letting myself be seen, truly seen, without fear of being discarded. That night, we didn't make plans. I simply stayed. We sat out on the back deck with a blanket around our shoulders, watching the stars. I met Atia. He held my hand again, resting it against his chest like he needed the steadiness of it. There was a softness to the way he touched me, not rushed or demanding, just present, as if being close to me mattered to him more than anything else in that moment. And that made all the difference. I don't know what this is supposed to look like, I admitted as we watched the sky. He glanced over at me. Me either, but I know how it feels. I smiled. And how does it feel? He leaned his head slightly against mine. Like home, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. There it was again, that quiet conviction he carried. No drama, no calmest, just truth. Eventually he kissed me again. Slower this time, deeper, but still tender, still wrapped in respect. Later, when we were curled up on the couch, the lights dimmed and the soft sound of crickets coming through the window, I rested my head on his shoulder and asked, "Do you think this could really work? You and me?" His fingers played gently with mine. I think when something feels this real, you don't walk away from it. You make it work. And for once, I believed it. Not because I was swept up in fantasy, but because Ryan had shown me something I hadn't expected. That a connection built on trust, openness, and kindness could happen anywhere, even in a garden on a random Sunday when you weren't looking for anything at all. We didn't make promises. We didn't try to define everything that night, but we knew what we had, and that was enough. A few weeks later, Denise finally noticed something in my voice when I mentioned Ryan helping me again. He seems to be around a lot lately, she said, curious but not suspicious. He's easy to talk to, I replied simply and left it at that. Because some parts of my life no longer needed to be explained or justified. They just needed to be lived. As summer deepened, so did what we had. I began to notice how I smiled more, how I stood a little taller, how I looked forward to mornings again that one evening. As we stood in the garden near the wall we'd rebuilt together, Ryan looked at me and said, "You know, this wall might be the most meaningful thing I've ever helped build." I turned to him, smiling, "It's not just the wall." He nodded. "I know. And standing there in the golden light of dusk, I realized I wasn't the some woman I had been weeks ago. I had let something and dot something good, something true, and that changed me. So if you're listening, whoever you are, wherever, you are, heard this. I would never have thought that this could happen to me. Don't repeat my mistakes. Don't wait so long to let yourself be seen. Don't hide behind my ears or fear of what others might say, because sometimes when you least expect it, love finds you where you thought nothing new could ever grow again. And it surprises you in the most beautiful,